Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This week, I continue my series on the realms of Pugmire by talking about the direct opposition to the kingdom of Pugmire. The Monarchies of Mau, the kingdoms of the cats. Cats have a very different worldview than dogs, unsurprisingly. One that even casts man as a servant, not a master. So, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy as we talk about those darn cats. So first, let me just say in good faith that I have a bias here. I am a cat person. As such, Monarchies of Mau was the setting of Pirates of Pugmire that I was most anticipating. So, with that bias out of the way, let's begin, shall we? So, once upon a time, the Monarchies of Mau were all more or less, well, like pre-World War I Europe. A whole bunch of sovereign entities held together by a complex, almost Machiavellian arrangement of treaties. Each of the 6 great houses had alliances and rivalries with each other. So, when you're looking at that, you realize that the Monarchies of Mau were great as long as they didn't deal with any sort of external threat. Well, external threats happen. In this case, it was a war with the Kingdom of Pugmire. And somewhere along the lines, it was realized that something needed to be done because, well, all these rivalries between the various cat monarchies were causing issues with coordinating a war front. You know, the whole, oh yeah, I'm gonna look the other way and not send intel to this rival faction about an attack by the pugs. It kind of helps me in the short term type dealios. And one cat, a visionary cat, Trillion Mau von Mau, saw this conundrum and came up with a solution. She somehow got all the cat kingdoms to sort of unite together. So now, instead of it being like pre-World War I, Europe, it was more like Renaissance Italy. All the little kingdoms didn't quite necessarily get along with each other, but they had enough ties that backstabbing each other was no longer a good option. And essentially the war ended in a draw and a peace treaty. I.e., there was no actual winner because, well, there's never a winner in war, despite what history books tell you. And yeah, that's how we got the Monarchies of Mau. Now, the society, the precepts created by Trillion Mau von Mau that are the dominant force, the guiding principles, the bedrock ethics of the monarchies are called the Precepts of Mau. And there's 4 accepted precepts. There are a number of disputed ones, but we're not going to talk about those. The 4 accepted precepts are: always trust your instincts. Always pounce upon the minions of the unseen. Always reward loyalty. And always respect an honest duel. That last one, remember what I said about more like Renaissance Italy? Remember, dueling was big in Italy during the Renaissance. Always trusting your instincts. Well, that's how cats got to be where they are, the top of the food chain, nature's perfect killers. By trusting those instincts. Loyalty? Well, loyalty is earned, of course, which is one of the ideas behind the Monarchies of Mau. Loyalty is earned. So therefore, if someone is loyal to you, you want to keep that respect, keep that loyalty. So you're going to reward it. Duels are, of course, the lifeblood of keeping everything organized and settling disputes without them turning into bloody internecine wars and blood feuds. And, of course, just like the dogs, cats don't really like the unseen. The unseen is sort of the setting's embodiment of evil. You can't see it, hence why it's called the unseen, but it corrupts and it taints and it eats away. And it's dangerous. In fact, once upon a time, there were 7 kingdoms of cats. But the 7th, Smilodon, went exploring. They went over the mountains. They were lost for a generation. No one had heard or seen from them for a generation. And then they began to trickle back. Not all of them, but a small number. And they came back. They started interacting and engaging with the other noble houses. Agora, Mau, etc., etc. And trading and, basically taking up their former selves in the monarchies. And a number of them began joining other houses, taking the appellation von Smilodon to reflect that they were originally from the Smilodons. And the people who knew the Smilodon in the past found something off about them. And ministers and mancers, the priests and wizards of the cats, began analyzing, interrogating. And it was determined that every single Smilodon who had come back over the mountain had been corrupted by the unseen. And a number of those that they had dealt with and had become close with in the monarchies had become corrupted by the unseen. And so every single Smilodon within the monarchies was put down. One of those rare unanimous agreements by all 6 of the noble houses. And then a massive force was put together that went over the mountains. This force was loaded with ministers to protect against the unseen, mancers to spot the threats, as well as all the other forces necessary for a war. And when they returned, much smaller, they reported that the Smilodon had been destroyed, that they were no more. But at the same time, many of those in this force, after having been verified to have been uncorrupted, started joining the other houses to bring the knowledge that they brought back in case the Smilodon return. Now, let's talk about cats' religion. You see, dogs worship man as a great master. Cats don't. Every cat's personal spiritual path is, well, that, personal. But one huge overarching belief is that humans were the greatest of the cat's servants. In fact, humans were so great that they granted cats 9 lives, so that the humans could have more time serving their great and loyal masters, the cats. Yes, cats believe in reincarnation. And because of this, every cat strives to make himself worthy of that great gift of 9 lives. Because each cat gets reincarnated 9 times. Well, 8 times, technically. Yeah. And that is the Monarchies of Mau from a setting perspective. Next week, I will talk about them from the mechanical side. So until then, I'd like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.